Hello, good morning, students. Today we are going to take up the terms and concepts for BF Part 3 in English Literature. In this series of lectures, we are going to take up two literary terms or concepts. First is paradox, and second is antithesis. Both of them are quite similar, but there is a striking difference between the two. Let's discuss first of all what is a paradox, and then we will take up simple examples from literature and from general life. Then we will discuss antithesis and their examples, and after that we will have a difference between the two. First is paradox. Actually, a paradox is a logically self-contradictory statement or a statement that runs contrary to one's expectations. It is a statement that, despite apparently valid reasoning from true premises, leads to a seemingly self contradictory or a logically unacceptable conclusion. A paradox usually involves contradictory yet interrelated elements that exist simultaneously and persist over time. In simple terms, we can say that a paradox is a juxtaposition of a set of seemingly contradictory concepts that reveal a hidden truth. Dear students, in paradox, we have a phrase or a sentence, a group of words, which is contradictory to each other, means in ideas, but there is a hidden truth behind it. There is a raw truth underneath the statement. Paradoxes actually use the contradictory ideas to incite fresh thought and present an idea that is contrary to traditional concepts. It doesn't have a set structure. For example, we can say, be cruel to be kind. As you know from William Shakespeare's Hamlet, Hamlet says that be cruel to be kind. And Ellen Tate also says, less is more, less is more. Be cruel to the kind. Here, be cruel to the kind simply means that Hamlet wishes to murder his uncle Claudius, who was the lover of his mother Gertrude and who was the murderer of his father. That is why he wants to be cruel, means he wants to kill his uncle so that he will be kind towards his mother, means he will do a justice to his own mother simply because his uncle Claudius murdered his father. That's why he wants to take an revenge. And second, less is more. That less is more simply means if something is less, that is that is more clear. If there is less, if you speak less, there is more clarity of ideas. Or we can say, if there is something less, then we have more clarity of ideas, more about the things. If we speak more, if we write more, that create more confusion. So you say less is more. Then we have more examples from, and we can define. Paradox finds its origin from the Greek word paradoxis, meaning incredible or contrary to expectation or existing belief. Paradox is a statement which means on its face logically contradictory, absurd, or against traditional ideas, and yet turns out to be interpretable in a way and makes the reader think in an innovative fashion. It means, on surface, the statement or the group of ideas or phrases that appear to be logically contradictory, but it has a hidden truth behind it. It's a frequent component of verbal wit. The Irish writer Oscar Wilde was particularly noted for his use of paradoxes. In the picture of Dorian Gray, in the picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, he writes, "Well, the way of paradoxes is the way of truth. To test reality, we must see it on the tightrope. When the verities become acrobats, we can judge them." The paradox was a persistent and central device that was developed in poetry to create a remarkable thought image out of words. For instance, in John Donne's Holy Sonnets, what he says, "Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful. One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die." The poet tries to demean the phenomenon of death by deeming it as just a short sleep. However, the inevitability and power of death is presented in the same paragraph. Another example taken from The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare shows the use of contradictory ideas. The idea of the earth being the birthplace as well as the graveyard for creatures is presented through these lines. The earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. What is her burying grave? Burying grave, that is her womb. The purpose of a paradox is to arrest attention and provoke fresh thought. It is viewed as an instrument that is fundamental to the poetic language, not only because of the literary juxtapositions, but also because a paradox continuously redefines and further qualifies meanings of ordinary words. When two terms that in ordinary usage are contraries are joined is a called on an oxymoron. An oxymoron deliberately uses two ideas. This contradiction creates a paradoxical image in the reader or listener's mind that generates a new concept or meaning for the whole. For example, life is bittersweet. Here, bittersweet, loud silence, lonely crowd, living death, darkness visible, and the precious bane. All are the examples of oxymoron. Now let's take up the next term, that is antithesis. Actually, antithesis, an antithesis, which literally means opposite figure of speech that involves contrary ideas, words, or sentences within a balanced grammatical structure. Moreover, this combination of contrary ideas and balanced structures help to perfectly highlight the contrast in the sentence. However, it is important to note that the sentence itself does not contrast. For example, let's look at the sentence: Many are called, but few are chosen. Many are called, but few are chosen. Here, the two contrasting words, many and few, help to emphasize the meaning of the sentence. Though this is very meaningful. Common examples: man proposes, God disposes. Love is an ideal thing, marriage is a real thing. Setting foot on the moon may be a small step for a man, but a giant step for mankind. Next, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. These are the opening lines of A Tale of Cities, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Next, Abraham Lincoln says, "The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." Next, you say, Martin Luther King Jr., what he's also wrote, "We must live together as brothers or perish together as fools." That we must live together. We must keep our hand in hand. We must be, we must live as brothers, as unified human beings. We must live in union, or we shall perish together as fools, or we shall divide together as foolish people. As you can see from the above examples, an antithesis always contains two opposing ideas. These ideas may not be structurally opposite, but they act as functionally opposite when comparing two ideas for the purpose of emphasis. Overall, emphasis helps the audience to understand more clearly the point the speaker or the writer is trying to make. Earlier, you had the definition of paradox. The paradox, that was the figure of speech that contains two seemingly contrasting ideas together in order to reveal some hidden or unexpected truth. As you had the examples, your strength lies in your weakness, less is more, be cruel to the kind, be cruel to be kind. Attack is the best form of defense. Your enemy's enemy is your friend. A paradox helps to make the audience think about something in an innovative way. We can also use a paradox to present an idea that is contrary to traditional concepts. In literature, writers use paradoxes to get readers' attention and to incite fresh thought. Furthermore, there are two types of paradoxes in literature as situational and rhetoric. While a situational paradox is a circumstance that is contrary, or a rhetoric paradox is a seemingly contrasting comment made by a character. Now let's have a difference between antithesis and paradox. Actually, antithesis is a juxtaposition of two contrasting ideas or words in the same statement to create a contrasting effect, whereas paradox is the juxtaposition of a set of seemingly contradictory concepts that reveal a hidden truth. Antithesis creates a contrasting effect and bring the audience attention to the point writer is trying to make. Antithesis often has a parallel structure, whereas paradox uses contrary ideas to incite fresh thought and present an idea that is contrary to traditional concepts. Now, let's have examples of antithesis, such as man proposes, God disposes. Love is an ideal thing, marriage is real thing. There are two contrasting structures. But in paradox, we have a single sentence, a single group of words: be cruel to be kind, less is more. These are the basic differences between a paradox and an antithesis. Antithesis often has a parallel structure, whereas the paradox doesn't have a set structure. Both antithesis and paradox are two figures of speech that contain two contradictory ideas. Antithesis is the juxtaposition of two contrasting ideas or words in the same statement to create a contrasting effect, whereas paradox is a juxtaposition of a set of seemingly contradictory concepts that reveal a hidden truth. Writers use antithesis to create a contrasting effect and bring the audience's attention to the point he or she is trying to make. However, writers use paradoxes to incite fresh thought and present an idea that is contrary to traditional concepts. Dear students, we have discussed in detail the concepts of paradox and antithesis and the difference between the two. Now, I will post you in the group the PDF notes of these two terms and you will study in detail. That's all for today and a nice time ahead. Until tomorrow. Thank you.